There was something very interesting you were telling me about snake temples. Like Kantirwa Stadium is built on a lake.
When we talked about Kantirwa Stadium, it used to be a lake, but these lakes were habitats for snakes. And even more when the rest of the city was under construction, the snakes were, mostly populating around the lake.
There are 5 ladies who are going around in the city with their book called The Bangalorean. The book is out now. Avatar took 11 years to make, and so did this book.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Modi, of course, wrote the letter for this book. You got a letter from our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi.
So, for example, Culture Rings used to offer something called life experiences. You could be a potter for a day or a cobbler for a day.
Okay.
So, it was an internship. As an apprentice, you would go and assist a dhobi to wash his clothes.
Sweden's healthcare is so great. And as a Swede, you wouldn't guess that Indian healthcare is so good. But for me, my experience, it's absolutely opposite. Swedish healthcare is not so good on many ways.
Okay.
And Indians and the help we get, not only for me in this case, but other cases as well.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Tuhin show, Icons of Bengaluru, presented by the Style.world. Today I'm in conversation with 2 lovely people. One is a Bangalorean and other fell in love with the city and became Bangalorean partly after marriage, partly before marriage. Now, one is a social anthropologist, founded a company One World and bridging Indian culture with the rest of the world, and being an author of an amazing book which is an ode to Namma Bengaluru, Bangalorean. Another management consultant from Sweden who came to India in search of some work but fell in love with the country and one person in the country. Bringing Swedish and Indian culture together, he's also an author. He wrote a book, Doing Business in India, acclaimed by none other than Prime Minister Modi. I have Kaveri Sinhji and Johan Andesson. Welcome. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thank you for having us. How are you?
I'm doing good. How's India treating you?
Very well, thank you.
Are you gorging on some Indian food when you come to India?
Yeah, I have a huge list. I mean, for me, this is home, right? So, no matter whether I have a Swedish passport or not, coming here is coming home for me. So, I have a big list that Johan has to go through with me.
Okay, what all have you gone through?
Yeah, I mean, it's been quite busy with the book, of course. Lots of launches, but also meeting lots of people and actually eating pretty much food as well, which even it's on my list as well.
What is that one dish you're like gorging on? You love that dish.
I have to say biryani.
Okay.
Mutton biryani.
Okay.
But there are many types, but yeah, some of these are the number ones for me.
What about you? What is your go-to dish when you come to India?
I mean, that's probably what keeps us together, biryani.
Biryani?
Yeah, mutton biryani Andhra style and mutton biryani the Muslim authentic shadi wali biryani,
Don't give him Andhra style, he'll be on fire.
He eats it.
Oh, you eat it?
Yeah, I'm pretty used to it after my years in India now.
Yes, you came for 6 months and then you spent 7 years here. What happened there?
I mean, it was a job assignment for 6 months. And I thought by that it's a really nice experience. I've never been to India. I've basically been traveling in Europe, to some parts of Asia, but never in India. So I thought this would be excellent for me to do 6 months of just learning about the Indian culture and work in India, both professional but also on the private side. So that's how it all started. but of course it didn't stop there. I extended a couple of times, and then, as I said, it's 7 or even 8 years.
So who stopped you? Who stopped you in India? Was that the work, or you fell in love with the girl here?
Why I continued in
stopped you from leaving.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think it's a combination of many things, of course. This lady here, of course, but it's also the work that I did. I mean, it was very aligned with the professional ambition. Also, after we got some traction here, it started to grow, and then of course I was in charge of that journey, so I wanted to continue that as well. So it's a combination of things, and also the fact that I loved India. I do love, but at that time I really enjoyed the culture, Peter, and also the biryani.
We'll talk about that in detail, but talk about traction. There are 5 ladies who are going around in the city with their book called The Bangalorean. The book is out now. It's a note to Namma Bengaluru. Congratulations for this book. Avatar took 11 years to make, and so did this book.
Yeah, exactly. It's been a labor of love, for sure. And I think I started writing this book. It was 2013 when I started. And then 5 years after I started, Johan started to write his book. And then he finished his book. And 3 years later, I finished my book. So yeah, it's been a long journey.
Well, I was just talking to a lot of people. I was talking to Jackie as well. She was saying the kind of love you're getting for this book is incredible. It's not just a coffee table book. It's more than that. Like, there are portraits, but there are stories as well. Whose idea was this to make Bangalorean?
That it started out as just an idea in my head. I had been consulting for a Danish company that was struggling with the Indian context, being from not from here and not being able to understand the nuances of diversity in India. They were really struggling, and they asked me to come in and build personas to help them recognize and understand their workforce. And I found it such an interesting exercise, even more after I saw how much it helped them. And I said, this could help anyone, not just a foreigner. It could help me, because even for me to go a little deeper beyond the surface of the people that you engage with on a daily basis or even depend on, right? So I started with just this 10 people slide. And then I went back and I was excited, so I made it a 30 people slide. And then the client jokingly asked me, are you writing a book? That's actually how the idea was born, that, yeah, maybe I should write a book. But I'm not such a great writer. I think I have good ideas, but when I read my own articles, I felt like I need something more compelling.
Maja nahi aa raha hai.
Maja nahi aa raha hai. Not having so much fun with my own words. So I invited 2 wonderful writers who were both actually volunteering for different things and writing as well. And I noticed how talented they were. So they joined me as writers, and then we needed photographs, because you have to see the person's face when you're reading his story. So we got 2 beautiful photographers. So Farah Gilani, Melissa Parkerton were the writers. Katya Anthony and Chris Page were the photographers. And then one of the subjects in our book, she stepped forward and said, I want to be the creative director. So Tanya Singh Khosla. And I think this book probably would have just been a paperback, written in alphabetical order, if she hadn't actually taken it and turned it into this thing that
it's beautiful. The
great
color,
reviews.
the text on it, which is like standing out, even on the same color. It's incredible.
Thank you.
But the book talks about who's who of Bangalore, and it also talks about the common people in Bangalore. What are you trying to show people through this book? What is Bangalorean for people who would just pick up the book?
Yeah, so the original intention was to portray the diversity and the magic of the people around us, right? So there was no who's who in the book originally. But once I started to take a step back and look at the big picture, then it needed to be a balanced picture. It needed to be not just, the personas that are right here in the cafeteria around me. So for example, Culture Rings used to offer something called life experiences, where you could be a dhobi for a day. You could be a potter for a day or a cobbler for a day. So it was an internship. As an apprentice, you would go and assist a dhobi to wash his clothes.
Not just for fun. For 8 hours, you have to be there.
Yeah, you have to be there the entire day. There was like a shorter 6-hour day.
But you get a lunch break as well.
But you would basically arrive when your boss is having his coffee. And when you're like a milk woman or a milkman, then you actually wake up at 3 a.m. because you have to wash the cows. And then you have your coffee and then you milk them. And it came to a point where they became my extended social circle. And none of my friends from the other society that I had earlier been a part of had that kind of knowledge about these people. And I thought it was such an advantage to get to know people so deeply that were not in your social circle. That's actually how it became not really the who's who. It was people that you wouldn't otherwise meet. But when I stepped back and looked, it needed also some of the people who were change makers. So it's still not who's who, because you don't have them in this book. People who maybe made an impact on fashion or beauty or technology or women leadership, change makers in the food industry. So maybe like in total 10 people who made an impact and made Bangalore kind of turn on its heels. If I had to add the who's who, it would be a much bigger book.
Are there people you approached, they refused, but now they want to be in the book?
A few.
Kaun hai wo book?
I will lose my biryani access if I tell you. All access to biryanis will be lost. But there were people who were, I think, hesitant, shy, didn't fully understand what the project was. There are some who have just wished me well and continued to wish me well without any regret for saying no. And what I've done, because it's a representation of an industry, right?
Right.
So it's not like, oh, you're the best technology leader and therefore I'm approaching you. I'm approaching you because you're a technology leader. If you say no, I'll ask another and another and another.
Right.
And somebody will come.
Right.
And that's how this book actually worked out. Next time there's a book like this, then let's do this together.
I think it should be a different book altogether. Like we were discussing, you should do something on royal families of India. How are the royal families of India now?
Yeah.
Across India, there are royal families. So probably talk to them, the North Indian, the West, the East and the South. The families
Absolutely.
are here.
And in fact, there's a section in this book which is called Royal Families of Bangalore.
Yes.
Or
yes.
Bangalorean royal families, because it became so fashionable to have a home in Bangalore, no matter where you were from.
Right.
So there was something called the Royal Club in the 1970s, where they used to all hang out, go to Blue Fox and go dancing, go to the club, have races and vintage. At that time they weren't vintage, but car races and things like that. That group is still here. And this book actually brought them together for a tea party, two tea parties. So, great idea to have an extension.
Oh, lovely. I've gone through the book. There is one which I just loved. It's a small chapter. It's about the street dentist. I found it very interesting because dentist is the one which everybody needs, and this guy is doing everything on the street. He's making teeth for people, he's treating them on the street. Everything is happening on the street. Which is your favorite?
One that really captured my heart, and I think all of us authors just fell in love with her. Her name is Diana, and she's a transgender, and we called her the blessing dispenser, which basically means she goes around dispensing blessings in exchange for a bit of money, whatever anybody wants to give. And she believes in herself to have the power to bless and curse, but she doesn't believe in cursing. So she only blesses. We spent days following her and understanding what her journey is like, how people receive her, respected and lonely she is, and how dignified, So for us, it really gave us an insight, I think, that changed us in some way.
There's a mural also on MG Road, if you see, on transgenders.
Yeah. Okay.
Right on MG Road. It's a huge mural. It's beautiful. Which is your favorite chapter? Did you read the book or not?
I have read many versions of it once it's being produced, so I know quite many stories there. One early version then of Kamala.
I knew he was going to say that.
yeah, you knew. You already put up. There's this woman that have been through a lot through her life, so it's basically her life journey. Now she struggles over the years and lives in the slum, but has in a very, very strong way come out stronger and has put her children in a very nice path. So I think that was something when I read that and really connected to that.
Stories like this keep you going, because sometimes you're like, okay, what am I doing in life? What is happening with me in my life? Then you see these people, they're also content and happy where they are. And then you start to realize that, okay, be happy and let's keep moving forward. Let's be positive about the things.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much we take so much for granted until you read the story of someone who has way less, right? The way that the idea inspired people itself for me is so fulfilling, regardless of the end product. But the last person to be really inspired and do something about it is Abhishek Podar.
Right.
He's the founder of MAP, and you were there at the launch. But what he did was he said, I would like you to take this and turn it into a permanent digital exhibit in MAP.
Okay, wow.
So if you go to the Museum of Art and Photography now, you can click into Bangalorean.
Okay.
And Kamala's story, for example, is displayed across 8 screens.
Okay.
So you can actually go much deeper into her life than even I think she goes. If you look very deeply, you'll see an old Jack Daniels bottle. You'll see all the things that she recycles, to make her her life happen.
But tell you one thing, after this book has come out, this hit the market, all these guys are also benefited who are featured in this?
It's a non-profit, right? So what I did was that we have sold these books to people who can afford, and the ones who are in the book who can't afford it, we just gave them a book.
Okay.
And of course, when they came for the launch and things, so we took care of their expenses and paid for a little meal. But it's not, we didn't pay anybody to be a part of this project. We just said, do you want us to tell your story?
Do they feel like they're celebs now, they're featured in a book?
So I wouldn't say celebs, but I've had, especially the one that we had in Catholic Club, we invited, there were 6 people from the book who were there. They came out and they shared their stories firsthand. So it was Muni in a wheelchair about his advocacy for people with disabilities.
Right.
There was Bhagya, who almost died of hunger. And then her faith got her another chance to live. Or Janaki, who's a battered woman in love with her rickshaw driver husband in spite of that. And they came forward and shared their testimony and cried and said, thank you for allowing us to share this story, so that our journey can go on and inspire. We never thought our story would ever be shared, and now you've taken it around the world. So that's what they're saying. So I think that is one thing they're taking back from it. And so far, I'm still just observing. I'm not celebrating, or I'm just seeing how it works, you know.
Who was the most difficult person to catch? I heard the story of HD Devegowda though.
Yeah, he was difficult to catch for a photograph.
Yes.
So Katya kind of basically, even though we had an appointment and everything fixed with him, and he had been very receptive at the time of the interview, but the photography, somehow the timing probably was around some campaign. So even though we had an appointment, Katya stood outside the gate and there was no sign of him.
Okay.
So we just said, okay, get some masala chai and wait as long as it takes. So she sat in her car with her laptop, kept working, and suddenly she saw some movement.
Okay.
And then in a matter of seconds, she had him, you know. So yeah, I mean, there were those kind of experiences, but I would say no one's been difficult. This city is not a city of difficult people.
Right.
So, and also I'm not so determined that I keep chasing you till you say yes.
Okay.
One time chance. So there are, like my grandma's story, my grandma, we're Gujaratis, and my father's sister's married to a Tamilian.
Okay.
And so when she went to Tamil Nadu to see her samdis, they gave her a masala dosa and she loved it. And then they came back with the second one and she said, no, thank you.
Okay.
In a polite way. And then they took it away.
Okay.
And then she said, I was hungry all night. They didn't force me. Even once. They didn't ask, you know. So I'm also a little bit more the Tamilian type.
Okay.
I ask you once, you say no, I go away.
Did you ask her once or did you ask her again and again to get married?
Assuming he asked me and I didn't ask him.
I think so as well.
You asked her or she asked you?
Yeah, I think it developed over time and then it became quite natural.
Okay.
But then also.
So Bangalorean is out now. It's a beautiful book about Bangalore, about people of Bangalore. Go grab a copy of Bangalorean and explore Bangalore through this book. We'll talk about the work you do, but before that, let me talk to Johan. You came to India for 6 months selling the management consultancy. What was it like? Why did you choose India first?
Initially, it was, as you said, it was a 6-month assignment, and I had never seen India before. I'd never been there. I read a bit about it, and I was basically just curious. I was curious to explore the country. I was curious to work more with Indians and live there, and basically traveling around and just get an experience both professionally and private. So that's how it started, and then of course I found this is a good opportunity for me through the work to go here. It was quite simple and not so much thought through it. It was not a big decision. I didn't know how big the decision became.
You just came here, experimented and sailed through.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, a little bit like that.
What are top 5 management skills you will tell people to work on?
Top 5 management skills. I mean, if I put it like this, and in the context of the book, it's basically management consulting or doing business in India as a foreigner. That's more or less my scope of it, right? I saw so much challenges, you know. I mean, I've worked with 45 different consultant assignments, and I studied more companies like that. And I've seen that foreign companies almost always fail first.
Okay.
and they fail sometimes over and over again before they succeed, and some of them fail and are not coming back. And there's many examples in the book of that, and sometimes also, if it's not coming into the market, it's about collaborating IT services, and even that is quite often challenges. So I saw there are lots of challenges, but I also see how that could be bridged and how that can turn out to be a successful journey. I met Kaveri, and through culture rings that I was looking from the side and exploring and be part to some extent of some of the tours and so on, I also got a little bit deeper in the society than typical foreigner. Right. And I mean, for instance, what Kaveri said there earlier, that there's so many different personalities and different personas. And I think that's also coming from little Sweden, when we Swedes are quite more or less the same. And then you come to India and you have that mindset. And I think that's some other expats say, okay, this is how Indians are. I would say it's not like that. It could be any type. So I think even, and of course in the book I also describe lots of patterns, but the whole point is it's so different and really diverse, India. So that's another sort of thing that I got during my stay, and I think that's also something was the reason. And then I guess the last part is, so first I tried a lot and I failed a lot, and then I learned. So after time I managed to grow. So I think that kind of experience is also what I bring in, and why I choose to write the books. I mean, for me it's important to understand this culture aspect first. So in the book, for instance, I start to describe how is the society, because if you don't know how the society is, that explains a lot of things then going into the business side as well.
But see, if you talk about culture, India is so vast.
Yeah.
There's so many cultures in India. How would you differentiate? Because we'll come to the book as well, where I have a very big question how to do business in India. But cultures in India, how did you study the cultures in India then?
There's no one culture. It's very important to be extra, sensitive and try to feel how the situation is.
Just gauge whatever is coming.
Of course. But there is a few big, I would say, differences when it comes to Swedish culture, and there are many aspects of it. I mean, one is I talk about having lots of coffees or teas with new relationships before we make business. And for me, it was such a frustration that I have to go and meet. I just wanted to, strike the deal. And I had an offering, and why don't we get started?
So how much time did it take to strike the first deal?
I mean, it depends when you count. I think within 6 months or so, I think it was the first one. So it was lots of meetings and so on. But because, and the reason is that you need to build a relationship. In Sweden, again, since we are more similar and we know it, we have a starting trust level that is higher.
Right.
And which makes sense because we are closer to each other. So that you have to build, for instance, and then that is one sort of thing that you have to need to think as a foreigner.
You were approaching people, nobody was taking you seriously. Then you hired a secretary to talk on your behalf. You got a grand welcome at Empire.
I mean, many business discussion were explored in that way, to have an assistant and again to adjust to the system and secretary speak to secretary better, and can get a first meeting with the MD and the CEO. So that was one of 200 tactics that figured out, and that led in one of the cases to Empire, which actually in the end I got an assignment and delivered for them, which was pretty cool. And most of, I guess, the listener here knows Empire, but it's a very, very local, but also successful chain within restaurants and hospitalities.
There's some unique things they do, right, at Empire. What are those things? There are cameras for everything.
Exactly. When actually looking into the operation, because that's what I did more or less analysis. How could they take it to the next level? And when I looked into the operations, it was so straightforward and so simple. We had a walkthrough through the offices there, and a little bit what they were doing then, and then said, okay, here, is the surveillance room or
Surveillance
something, or
room, yeah.
it had some other name, I think. And then we went in there, a couple of guys sitting there and monitoring a few screens with different kind of KPIs. I mean, not so many, but KPIs and colors. How is the status? Is it red? Is it green? It was basically the lead time, how long time it took to deliver each meal to each customer. So the monitoring as everything. And they were so instant, so they had walkie-talkies lying in front of them.
Okay.
So basically what they did is they watched all the restaurants being active, and they, if it was going red, one of the KPIs, they called the restaurant manager and said, you better deliver on this one now.
Okay.
So it was like an instant feedback culture.
Oh, wow.
That made everyone on toes, and it was quite interesting, that part.
And then you wrote a book as well, which is called How to Do Business in India. See, what I think is there are different ways to tackle and do business in India. It depends on the city you are in. What is this book talking about?
Yeah, it doesn't go into specific parts. Again, I'm trying to see the main patterns, because otherwise I would get lost. But I delivered and worked in except Bangalore, in Chennai and Pune, Bombay, and also Delhi, and then of course many companies are also spread across more or less the whole India.
Right.
But I did that, and I get a bit of a flavor on the differences, which I do not elaborate so much. And as a foreigner, there are differences, but it's even in I would say in Bangalore, a difference also, because there's so many cultures anyway.
Yes,
right?
yes.
But then of course in North it's a bit different than here. But
in North, you have to have chai with your client.
Yeah.
In South, you have to have coffee.
Exactly.
But if you go to Mumbai, you should just go with the agenda and close it.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good one. Huh? I mean, it is management literature. I try to also incorporate my personal stories in it.
Right.
A little bit for everyone that is coming to India, it becomes so much personal stories. And in my case, given my context, it was extreme.
Okay.
With personal stories that also was quite easy to just put there,
Like he acted in a Kannada movie also.
Oh, you acted in the movie as well? Wow.
It was actually a Kannada series, but one of the biggest series, Agnisakshi.
Okay.
I was there for 3 episodes, so that's, for instance, there in the book. And then, just to another big one, I also got completely healed from a very serious sick
Yes.
aspect.
Through Ayurveda?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So that's also another story. So there are quite a few strong ones that I just
So
had,
what happened there? How did you get into Ayurveda, and what were you suffering from?
I was actually diagnosed in Sweden far before I came to India.
Autoimmune.
Autoimmune, thank you. Disease called Crohn's, which is quite serious.
Okay.
And I was having constant surgeries in Sweden. I was on medication heavily, and that's crazy in itself. And then I went to, after a couple of years in India, it went a little worse, and then I had to look at options.
Okay.
I was more or less forced, because I was not in a good shape. And then I did look for some, and then Ayurvedic tradition, ancient methods. The most sad and interesting parts of this is that the Swedish doctors completely misdiagnosed me. And the Indian doctors, especially the alternative Ayurvedic, they said, you don't have this diagnosis, and they were right.
Okay.
And as Kaveri just said, the Swedish doctor just put now antibiotics every day for 7 years. And what's also interesting in this, and that's also why I write in the book, that Sweden's healthcare is so great. And as a Swede, you wouldn't guess that Indian healthcare is so good. I mean, really no, but it's not like it can't be as good, But for me, my experience, it's absolutely opposite. Swedish healthcare is not so good on many ways.
Okay.
And Indians, and the help we get, not only for me in this case, but other cases as well, is much better. You get help faster.
I would say you have better care in Sweden and good healthcare in India.
It's a good system.
Okay.
But you don't really have, the kind of expertise and variety of expertise. Like when he even got treated and operated in Varanasi in the Hindu hospital.
Okay.
And they had paintings on the wall of the surgery that he was having.
Okay.
So it was to that level of specialization, and he felt like, I am in the right place. There is a mural of my surgery, He also was treated at the Sri Sri Ravi Shankar's Ayurvedic facility, but Ramesh is the guy who actually cured you, right? Like a simple man who just took a couple of 100 rupees per Sunday.
Okay.
Over 8 months, and he promised to heal him at the end of that 8th month, and
wow.
did. Like, it was sealed. He never had a surgery again. And of course, he aborted his antibiotics. And he's still suffering from the antibiotics effect on his stomach.
Oh, that is there. Yeah. I can understand that. Because I was asthmatic for 13 years. And I was on heavy antibiotics.
Yeah.
And after 13, I didn't get any attack of asthma. But then I started increasing in size. Talk about books. People are reading books.
I hope so. Or if they aren't, then I guess they better start now. Business, leisure. Like when this book came to me in Sweden, and I opened it and I smelt it. The romance.
Oh yes.
You know?
That smell is very personal.
I don't think that's out of fashion at this point. And at the Lit Fest, I met it was like a festival of books.
Right.
You couldn't possibly have that happening if people weren't reading.
Okay.
So
Agreed.
I think there's enough reading going on, even if it's declined a little bit.
The personal touch is required.
Yeah.
Marking, personal touch.
Yeah.
Smelling the book, as you said. Yes. There's so many memories attached to that. Let me ask you a straightforward question. Now, in Sweden, people believe in work-life balance, right? They have lesser working days, right? The first picture in this book is of Mr. Narendra Modi, who talked about 70 hours of working in a week. Can Swedes do this?
He does it.
You do it?
Yeah, I do it.
But I think the pattern is a bit different, and it comes back to society a bit. In Sweden, a typical family life for people that have family and have kids, like we have, both are working 100%. And we have very limited support system. We don't have any of my parents helping out. They actually live in another city.
Okay.
And we have limited help in the house as well. There's no nannies. There's a little bit of cleaning we have, but not so much otherwise,
Don't you miss that in Sweden? House help?
I mean, that we do miss, and that's the point. It becomes much more stressful, and the number of hours you have as a family in that situation is different.
Right.
But if you look instead then in India, where we're living, there's no stress to come back home to help out, because we do have the nannies, so the support system is there. And one other difference is also that it's very, very common in Sweden that both the woman and the man are working full-time and doing career at the same time.
Right.
In India, it's often, still, I think I'm not really up to date, but my experience was the man over the time, which means that you have even more help. So then could we, and again, we can work 70 hours, but the normal case is if I would ask a Swede having a family, a colleague to me, can you work the weekend? We need to do that.
But then how is Swedish work-life balance different from the hustle culture in India?
My experience is that there is always people that you can, take help from in the house. For instance, we had nanny, we had cleaning, we even have a cook and driver.
Friends, neighbors.
Friends. So that's the supporting system I talk about. So yes, it could be very stressful at work and lots of hustle, but at least I don't need to be home 4:30 on a Tuesday to pick up my kids because someone else will do it. In Sweden, I have to do that because the kindergarten is closing. So that kind of stress levels and so there is work-life balance in that, in another way.
I think from my perspective, it's like the system in Sweden is set in such a way that it supports you. So if your child is sick, then you're supposed to take time off and your work cannot stop you from it.
Okay.
Right? So of course, it's a little bit different when you're an entrepreneur or if you're, in a highly paid, high position in a company or something. But on average, I think people are given a lot of leverage for your situation. Whereas in India, you're kind of on your own. So the society comes forward and supports you.
Okay.
And that makes it less lonely here.
Right.
But we also can be quite spontaneous. Whereas in Sweden, like a few times I asked my Swedish neighbor, I'm late, can you please pick my kid up? And they were like, sorry, we are making dinner now. Like, yeah, but just drop your dinner, pick my kid up, I'm late. No, we can't do that. You should have told us 2 weeks ago and we would have done it.
Okay.
So they expect you to be responsible.
Okay.
Because you have a system that supports you.
India people can support you. like
in
that?
India, they will drop anything. In fact, an Indian in Sweden, Krishna, my neighbor, I once was so depressed, with the way things were. It was raining and I was going through some culture shock. And I just didn't have the energy to walk, and I didn't have a Swedish driver's license. So I went down to my neighbor and I said, Krishna, I'm just feeling really down. I really want to pick my daughter up from school. I have to pick her up, but can you drive me? And he was like, I have a meeting now, but I'll cancel it and I'll take you.
Okay.
I don't know if a Swede would have done that. I don't know if you would have done that. But it's a culture thing, right? You just want to step forward and support.
Right.
And I think it comes from the system. We don't have a system that supports us. So we depend on society and friends.
There's a meme which is going around, and it's like there's this lady who's working. It's an animation, and the other lady comes. She was like, "Can you do this interview for me?" She's like, "No, I have work, but can you do a favor?" She's like, "Okay, these are my water bill, electricity bill. Can you pay this as a favor?" No, right? So go do your work. Let me do my work. No favors.
No favors.
How would you differentiate the minimal living in Sweden to the colorful chaos in India?
Function before design, right? And I think that's the philosophy in Sweden.
Okay.
You don't pick something up because it's pretty. And that's, I think, what goes on between us as well, right? If I see something, wow, it's so nice. He's like, what do you need it for?
Right.
Like, I just think it's so beautiful. I want it. What are you going to do with it? I don't know. I just love it. How when you walk into a home, everything is functional.
Okay.
They even wait a long time before they choose the painting that they'll put up on the wall because they just want it to have the right meaning.
Right.
Whereas I can find it pretty, I'll find a spot later on my wall for it, right? So I think that's where the chaos comes from in India, where you just appreciate things very quickly.
Yes. I think that's what IKEA is giving us. Think before you buy.
Yeah.
Because you have to do a lot of work.
Yeah. You will have to screw it. It will also screw you back.
So which Swedish tradition would you like to introduce in India?
Coming to India, you see lots of traditions, right? You almost get shocked, and you start to, as an outsider, you start to, what is going on here? Why is this happening, and stuff like that, and understand some of it, not all of course, some of it, and a little bit makes sense, With that perspective, I try to look at our Swedish traditions, and they don't make sense so much. It's really coming often from some religious, and then converted to tradition, and by this time,
right,
not many knows half the details about the actual meaning. Now it's just been Christmas, and this is one of the biggest tradition is that we watch Donald Duck. All families watch one episode of Donald Duck.
Okay.
3 to 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve.
Why is that?
Yeah, exactly. And I don't basically have an answer because it's just become a Christmas. It's the same episode as it's always been,
Okay.
So that's my point. I mean, when I tell this to people and when I actually reflect, I think it's quite crazy. So in that sense, it's interesting to look at your own festivals and traditions as well. And many of them doesn't make sense. So in that sense, I wouldn't take that to India. But I would probably take one that you talked about the other day, which is fika.
Fika, of course.
Which is basically
pastries and coffee,
exactly.
The break basically.
So we try to put that a bit again in structure. So, for instance, at offices, companies are having like more or less a mandatory fika. I mean, sometimes once a week, sometimes several times a week at a certain point where everyone goes together, have pastries, 15 minutes break only, but coffee and tea and these things, and chat and loosen up a little bit from work. So I think that's a quite nice one, I would say.
Go to any office area in Bangalore, in India, after lunchtime, after 1:30. You will see everybody out on the road taking a walk after their lunch. They're probably having a coffee or tea or their breaks. Everybody is out and they're just walking in groups. You can't even drive there. It's like that.
Yeah.
There's one I saw here, especially in South.
That's
They're
amazing.
very particular about their lunchtime.
Yeah.
They're very particular about their walk after the lunch. Very particular about their morning coffee. It has to be there.
Yeah. I mean, come back to the fika concept. What that does is like it forces everyone into the same room at the same point. So you need to interact with each other, and we are also not so extroverted as well, right? So that's another point that So we all do it together and yeah, interact and socialize a little bit that we otherwise don't do so much in the meetings because we are trying to be so effective all the time, you know.
And talk about the weather.
Yeah, that's the only
That's what we talk
icebreaker
about.
we have, more or less.
What is that one Swedish dish you would introduce in India and take one Indian dish to Sweden?
I think from India, I would definitely take biryani to Sweden. Coming back to biryani, sorry, not being very creative around that. I would like to bring the fish eggs that you get in a toothpaste tube,
Okay.
which you just put.
Caviar.
Caviars.
Yeah.
Caviar is one. I think another one is probably salmon.
But that's here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the way we have it, oven baked and so on. So it's a bit different.
I want baked salmon.
Doesn't compete. Doesn't compete. Or IKEA's meatballs in a bag.
Oh yes. Whose hospitality is better, Sweden or India?
That's Indian.
Both are beautiful.
Both are beautiful.
Both are beautiful. Completely different.
Yeah.
But I cannot say one is better than.
See, but if I compare European hospitality and Indian hospitality, India gives a lot when they are into hospitality business.
Business-wise, hotels, absolutely. I was talking more about like the
People,
warmth and
the
hospitality you receive if you visit a Swede, or in terms of industry, yeah.
Coming to your work, the culture consultancy. What is culture consultancy?
In 2009, I set up my company, Culture Rings. It was then called Bluefoot.
Okay.
And it was primarily offering an insight into Bangalore through immersive experiences and tours. So
Okay.
you could actually, if you're a foreigner coming into India for half a day or one day, we would curate an itinerary for you
Okay.
specifically. So it was not like a group tour, that a preset itinerary. It was more like, what do you want to understand? Are you more
Okay.
into history or into food? What are your interests? And then, you know, depending on your age and things like that, we would curate. So that was how it started, and then quite organically grew into workshops and immersive learning environments where you can go in and understand the culture in a much more theoretical way in a classroom, or through cookouts, or like life experiences, being a cobbler, so at various levels. So I would say that if we divide them up, there are tours, immersive learning experiences, and corporate workshops.
What did you choose?
I mean, the Snake Temple is probably the first stop there, right? And then they have the Dobigat also that we visited. Yeah, maybe Kamala we met too.
Kamala.
Yeah.
There was something very interesting you were telling me about snake temples. Like all the, like Kantirwa Stadium is built on a lake, and there were a lot of snakes. And when they were building, just to say sorry to all those snakes, they built snake temple.
When the tours happen, we don't just take you to the top 10 monuments of the city and tell you the history, or drop names and dates. It's more about how did things become what they became. So when we talked about Kantirwa Stadium, it used to be a lake, but these lakes were habitats for snakes. And even more when the rest of the city was under construction, the snakes were, mostly populating around the lakes. So the British then asked their soldiers, who were Indians, to cover up and bury the lakes,
Okay.
And that way you could also build over them, plus the snake habitat would go away. So they did it, the Indians, but they also believed in the Sarpa Dosha, the curse of the snake.
Right.
So they believed that they're taking away the home of the snake, so they must apologize. So near every lake that has been filled up, there were more than 200 lakes in Bangalore city. Near every lake that has been filled up, there is a snake temple that apologizes to the snakes who lost their home. And then there was a tradition to feed people who come to the snake temple, because when you went to temples in the old days, you would give a lot of money.
Right.
And they had enough money to feed us, visitors. But now people just drop a coin. So now they charge us. So you should go to the snake temple in Kantirwa Stadium.
Wow. This
Excellent
is
dosas.
Yeah. And superb story.
I mean, when something goes wrong in your health or money or relationship in a business, whatever, the first suspect is planets. So you should do the pradakshina of the planets.
Yeah.
Second suspect is a snake.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of theories about why a snake should be upset with you. And then you go to the snake temple.
there can be a snake in your life as well. Beware of that. When you are giving experiences to everyone, what is the most unique experience?
So there was one that I would always love to go to. In fact, I wrote a little paper on it for my professor in Oxford University about this one festival I would go to every January, February during the Mahashivratri.
Okay.
It's a place called Kaveri
Okay.
where they have this festival called the Blue Festival, where they have, in a particular temple, you do piercings, all kinds of piercings, like little needles across your face to knives and daggers going through your tongue.
Okay.
Big chains going through the skin of your back with which you can pull like an SUV.
Okay.
But basically, you have to be pierced. Or you could be dangling by a hook that has gone through the skin of your back.
Oh.
And you are sliding across the city. 1 million people come to a tiny village every year to pray to Angalamman.
Okay.
And
where exactly is this village?
It is about 2 hours from here into Tamil Nadu, past Electronic City, if you go that way. But the Angalamman festival is the piercings festival. And the next day is the day where goddesses are supposed to come and possess people in your family.
Okay.
So that day, everybody paints themselves blue in that festival.
Okay.
And it's a mob, and at the end, the finale, the people on the hook sliding on, cables across the city, they carry newborn babies with them and slide across.
Getting goosebumps listening to this.
Yeah, so you can look up Kaveri Festival.
Festival.
To understand, what and you can even go there in January.
Were there people who run away from the chaos when they see the chaos in this country? They just run away. They're like, no, we don't want to be here.
Yeah, lots of them. Many of them don't even come out to see it.
Okay.
They make up their mind before they arrive.
Right.
You find them mostly in palm meadows.
But you were here for 7 years.
Quite interesting, because I think that's exactly how I start more or less my book also. The first thing I met about it was so much people all over the place, which is also interesting because when I also traveled back to Sweden at that time, first time I landed at the airport in Sweden, I felt there's no people. So just there it started, and then it's people. So I think that's definitely one of the things that hits you really, really strong. And I think now when I'm here visiting, I'm not really used to it. So now it's a little bit culture shock for me as well, when I have lived so many years now in Sweden.
See, it is like that. Like, talk about hospitality, talk about people who are happy for your success. When India won the World Cup, or when they were in Olympics or something, when they come back, there's a huge welcome for them at the airport. The Prime Minister will have a meal with them. There are ministers and a lot of things happening. When Australia won the World Cup, they went back. There was not a single person at the airport to celebrate that victory. Not a single person there.
Yeah, we like to celebrate.
Yeah, I think it's
the small stuff also.
Yes.
And big stuff also. Has your Prime Minister written you a letter commending your book?
No, that's
But Mr. Modi, of course, wrote the letter for this book. You got a letter from our Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi. How was that feeling? Do you still have that letter? Is it framed in your house?
Yeah, it is. It is actually framed. It's the only letter I have from Prime Minister. Not surprisingly. No, but I think it was actually quite cool. I would say it was very unexpected.
But did it help in selling more copies?
Yeah, so that's what. So that's why it was so unexpected. That
million followers.
I launched it of course, in India and the rest of the world through Amazon and Sweden and all that. But I didn't do much. But then suddenly this call came from the embassy in Stockholm and said, we have a letter from our Prime Minister. And I got a bit shocked, that what is this about? And but then said, we want to come and deliver what we have. And then they came along in suits and flowers and letter and all that, and just handed over this letter. And of course that was, it was really cool because it was very positive about the book. And after that I published this on LinkedIn and I got like 500,000 viewers, and then of course I got some help there instead in marketing activities. So I feel very thankful, and as you said, that's a big effort also.
Maybe you can send him a copy of my book.
Yeah, I'll do that. I mean, that's a big, not a big, but that's an effort that he makes. I mean, again, I wouldn't say, as you said, a Swedish Prime Minister wouldn't do something similar.
Hey, your book is going crazy. People are buying 200 copies, 300 copies.
Yeah. It's a limited edition, so it's only a 1,000 prints. So now it's coming to that first come, first serve kind of
Right.
stage.
Love, hate, tolerate about Bangalore.
I love the people, hate the pollution now, tolerate, I would say, the delays.
But I love the people and the food, I would say. That's really nice, and especially being here, meeting all the people I haven't seen for a long time. I hate pollution, but I also hate the traffic, which is also increasing. I tolerate, we have been out on the street on New Year's and lots of people, so I tolerate that crowd on the street that I've been walking in.
Well, welcome anytime. The Indian hospitality, culture, food, everybody's waiting for you. And when you come back again, let's hope there'll be more books and more accolades for you.
Thank you. It's been wonderful chatting with you and finding all the dots that we can connect as well.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Lovely talking to you. Well, we've got two corporates who are now authors. There's Bangalorean and there is How to Do Business in India, Kaveri and Johan. This is Icons of Bengaluru, presented by the Style.World.